Welcome to today's Explainer. Right now, we're diving into a massive, honestly urgent challenge that is quietly keeping CTOs and finance leaders up at night. We're talking about the hidden financial risks of scaling enterprise AI. Look, everyone is rushing to deploy artificial intelligence, right? But the way we're actually buying and managing the infrastructure underneath it is creating this ticking time bomb of runaway costs and architectural lock-in. So let's jump right in and look at exactly how we can regain control over how AI spending is managed.
$2.59 trillion. Just let that scale sink in for a second. That is Gartner's projection for worldwide AI spending in 2026. We're looking at a staggering 47% jump in just one single year, and AI infrastructure is making up almost half of that total. We aren't talking about experimental, small-scale innovation budgets anymore. This is a massive macroeconomic shift in enterprise capital allocation. And this sheer scale, it's exactly why managing the infrastructure layer has instantly shifted from a niche engineering debate into an urgent board-level priority.
And that brings us to a rather uncomfortable question for IT and finance leaders. Are you paying for premium, frontier AI models when you simply don't need them? Defaulting to the most expensive model out of convenience, or maybe just unfamiliarity with the alternatives, is a really common and frankly, a very costly trap. The reality of tech procurement today is that organizations are locking themselves into these rigid, multi-year agreements without ever really checking if the everyday tasks their teams are doing actually require that level of premium horsepower.
To really grasp the urgency here, we have to look at the explosive growth of model consumption itself. Gartner just raised its short-term outlook for AI model spending to $32.6 billion in 2026. That is an enormous 110% jump from 2025. This is the exact moment where unmanaged API sprawl stops being a little rounding error and becomes a massive, completely unexplainable line item risk. Because as AI models get cheaper and faster per query, the friction that used to limit employee usage completely disappears. So your usage volume expands way faster than your per-token savings, and your total monthly spend just shoots straight up.
Now, that spending growth is actively compounding a second massive trend. By late 2026, 40% of enterprise applications will embed task-specific AI agents. Think about what a huge shift this is. We're moving away from these simple single-model pilots, where a user types a prompt into a chatbot once, and we're moving into genuine multi-model production traffic. A single task-specific AI agent doesn't just call one endpoint. It's typically calling multiple models across multiple providers behind the scenes. This creates a compounding explosion in usage and complexity that traditional procurement rules just absolutely cannot handle.
So this creates a brilliant yet totally terrifying dilemma. We've got ballooning infrastructure spending flowing straight into a massive control problem. You have thousands of agents calling multiple models, creating an absolute nightmare for routing, cost visibility, and security policy. The solution to all this chaos? It's the AI gateway. An AI gateway is the essential control plane infrastructure that sits right between your enterprise applications and the models they call. It enforces the rules and, most importantly, keeps your economics in check.
But here is where CTOs need to be incredibly careful. As David H. Deans warns, platform choices made under pressure can become strategic liabilities once a market matures. We have literally seen this exact dynamic play out before. Just think back to the early days of cloud computing or historical infrastructure choices around VMware. The biggest strategic mistake you could make right now would be treating your AI gateway as a simple commodity procurement decision without understanding the long-term costs of switching providers. We absolutely must avoid restrictive single-vendor lock-in.
Let's consider the direct contrast in value for a moment. On one side, you have premium frontier models. They are incredibly powerful for sure, but they're expensive, they lock you in, and they are often complete overkill for everyday business tasks. On the other side, you've got free or entry-level tiers. Independent benchmarks show that the performance gap between open and proprietary models has actually narrowed to less than 1 single percentage point over a year. For everyday stuff, drafting, summarization, research synthesis, these entry-level tiers are fundamentally good enough, and they're improving rapidly.
This brings us to a really interesting phenomenon we call the moving target. AI capabilities are advancing so rapidly that the premium performance you paid top dollar for just a year ago, it's now matched by a competitor's low-cost model, or it's even embedded in a free tier. The profound danger for large enterprises is making these rigid multi-year financial commitments against a capability curve that completely resets every single quarter. It's exactly like buying a brand new smartphone every single month, but being trapped on a 10-year payment contract. Just doesn't make sense, right?
So how do CTOs actually manage this moving target? Well, here is a highly actionable 4-step playbook. Number 1,
Tier by task, not title. Give premium models only to the tasks that actually demand it, not just to senior executives. Number 2, assign central ownership. You need a dedicated AI orchestration role to own the matching policy. Number 3, treat mapping as a subscription. Review your model-to-task assignments on a recurring basis because, as we know, the landscape changes monthly. And number 4, design for portability. Build your architecture around the capability you need, treating the underlying provider as a completely interchangeable layer.
Let's shift gears to the technology layer and see how this builds out in practice. Because no human manager can manually track all these constantly changing model tiers, right? Instead, enterprises are turning to continuous and automated model matching. This is the core magic of a modern AI gateway. It performs a just-in-time match, automatically routing each individual request to the cheapest AI model that successfully clears your specific quality threshold. It's honestly the only practical mechanism for keeping runaway volume costs visible and perfectly controlled.
However, not all gateways are created equal, and the market has essentially sorted into 3 distinct architectures. First, you have open standard approaches built on proxy patterns. These act as a neutral middleman that preserves your mobility. Second, independent commercial control planes that treat multi-model optionality as their absolute core feature. And third, ecosystem bundled gateways. These are tied to a single cloud platform. Now be warned here, while they do offer the fastest path to deployment, they represent the quietest form of vendor lock-in. Your switching costs accumulate gradually as your routing, your observability, and your billing all become hopelessly dependent on one single provider.
Fortunately, there is a massive resurgence of open architecture discipline led by what we call open innovation leaders. Take Langfuse, for example. They allow self-hosted data via standard SDKs. Kong acts as a completely neutral traffic controller, decoupled from the models themselves. Light LLM is fascinating. It translates a single standardized API into over 100 different LLM formats, letting developers write code once and switch backends instantly. And Vellum allows full pipeline exports. These providers build their businesses entirely around portability. They act as choice-first architectural components.
To help IT leaders actually evaluate these tools impartially, we rely on the Enterprise AI Vendor Neutrality Scorecard. This is a vital, totally objective 100-point vetting framework used during the technical procurement process to evaluate AI gateways. It strips away all the marketing hype and gives CTOs a really concrete way to measure the structural vendor lock-in risk of any new platform before they ever sign a contract. Let's break down exactly how this scorecard works.
When you're evaluating these tools, a massive 50% of your architectural freedom relies entirely on just 2 things. First up, API standards, which is worth 25 points. Your gateway absolutely must use open standard schemas, like OpenAI-compatible endpoints with 0 proprietary SDK requirements. Second is data freedom, also worth 25 points. It has to stream your telemetry, logs, and evaluations in open formats directly into your own storage buckets. If a vendor holds your data hostage in their UI, boom, you lose these points immediately.
So the real test is crossing the finish line with the remaining criteria. Logic portability gives you 20 points for keeping prompt workflows strictly in your own code repository. Cloud-agnostic design awards 15 points if the tool deploys natively anywhere via standard containers. And finally, ecosystem exit grants 15 points for contractually guaranteed offboarding paths with 0 metadata export fees. Add it all up. If your evaluated tool scores below a 75, that represents a critical, non-negotiable threat to your enterprise's long-term architectural choices. Which brings us to the ultimate question every CIO and CTO absolutely must ask their teams before signing any AI infrastructure contract. If our model strategy changes in 18 months, and let's be real, given the pace of this market, it absolutely will, does this gateway make that pivot easy, or does it make us captive to the choice we made today? Ultimately, the true cost of an infrastructure choice isn't what it costs to adopt, it's what it will cost you to leave. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and keep learning.